Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when destiny doesn't knock. It whispers, sometimes so softly, so unexpectedly, that it freezes us where we stand. And tonight's story begins with one such whisper. Can I sleep in your car? 6 simple words, spoken by a woman who seemed to have everything, yet carried a weight no one could see. A female CEO, polished, powerful, untouchable, standing in front of a single dad mechanic whose world had taught him to expect little and give much. In that instant, 2 very different lives collided, one shaped by boardrooms and pressure, the other by wrenches, grease, and the unending responsibility of raising a child alone. He was a man who fixed broken things for a living. She was a woman who hid her brokenness behind success. And though neither knew it yet, heaven had aligned their paths for a reason far bigger than discomfort or coincidence. This is a story about the kind of divine intersections that shake us awake, those unexpected moments where faith steps in quietly, rearranging the pieces of our lives with gentle precision. It reminds us that no title, no wealth, no strength can shield the human heart from exhaustion, and no struggle, no loneliness, no sleepless night goes unnoticed by a God who sees us fully. When she whispered her question, she wasn't just asking for a place to rest. She was asking for refuge, for mercy, for a moment of human grace. And when he froze, it wasn't fear. It was the overwhelming realization that he was being called to step into someone else's storm with courage and compassion. Tonight, let this story pull us closer to the truth that kindness is a calling, courage is a testimony, and compassion is a bridge heaven often uses to connect strangers who need each other more than they know. It reminds us that miracles rarely arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they come in trembling voices, late-night encounters, and unexpected requests that tests the softness of our hearts. The rain came down in sheets that autumn evening, turning the small-town streets into rivers of reflected streetlight. Marcus Chen stood in the open bay of his modest repair shop, watching the storm intensify as he wiped his hands on an old rag. His dark hair was damp with perspiration from the day's work, and his gray t-shirt bore the honest stains of engine oil and effort. Behind him, in the small office attached to the garage, his 8-year-old son, Leo, sat doing homework at a battered desk. The boy's sandy hair fell across his forehead as he concentrated on his math problems, his yellow rain jacket hanging on a hook nearby, ready for their walk home. Marcus had owned Chen's Auto Repair for 6 years now, ever since his wife, Elena, had passed away from cancer. The shop wasn't fancy, but it was honest work, and it allowed him to be there for Leo in ways his corporate job never had. Some days were harder than others, but they had built a life together, just the 2 of them, and that was enough. The sound of a car engine sputtering pulled Marcus's attention back to the street. A sleek sedan, expensive and out of place in this working-class neighborhood, rolled to a stop just outside his shop. Steam rose from under the hood, and even from where he stood, Marcus could see the warning lights illuminating the dashboard. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out into the rain. She was perhaps in her late 30s, with blonde hair that was quickly becoming soaked, wearing what had once been an immaculate light blue business suit. Even drenched and clearly distressed, there was something composed about her, a kind of quiet dignity that the circumstances couldn't entirely wash away. She looked at the shop, then at Marcus, and seemed to make a decision. Hurrying through the rain, she reached the shelter of the garage bay, water streaming from her hair and clothes. "Are you still open?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremor Marcus could detect beneath it. "My car, it just died." The engine light came on about 10 miles back, and I thought I could make it to the highway, but... Marcus nodded, already reaching for his keys. "Let me take a look." "Pull it into the bay here if it'll move." The woman shook her head. "It won't start at all now." "All right, I'll push it in." "Just put it in neutral." Marcus stepped out into the rain without hesitation, and together they maneuvered the sedan into the garage. By the time they finished, both were thoroughly soaked. Marcus popped the hood and immediately saw the problem. A broken serpentine belt, and from the looks of it, some overheating damage as well. He straightened, wiping rain from his face, and met the woman's anxious eyes. "The belt snapped, and your engine's overheated," he said gently. "I can fix it, but not tonight. I'll need to order the parts, and I'll want to check for any heat damage before I fire it up again. Earliest would be late tomorrow afternoon." The woman's composure cracked slightly. She looked around the empty garage, then out at the torrential rain, and Marcus saw something close to desperation cross her features. "Is there a hotel nearby?" she asked quietly. Marcus hesitated. "Nearest one is the Pinecrest Motor Lodge, about 3 miles down Route 9, but—" He glanced at the storm. "I should tell you it's not much of a place, and in weather like this they tend to flood. The old drainage system can't handle heavy rain." The woman pulled out her phone, looked at it, then closed her eyes briefly. "No signal." "Of course. You can use the phone in the office," Marcus offered, gesturing to where Leo sat, now watching the interaction with curious eyes. But when she tried, the line was dead. The storm had taken out the phone lines, something that still happened in this old part of town, where infrastructure updates came slowly. The woman stood there, dripping on the concrete floor, and Marcus could see her trying to calculate her options. She had no car, no phone service, no way to reach anyone. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and she was clearly exhausted, the kind of bone-deep weariness that went beyond physical tiredness. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know this is unusual, but is there any chance—" She paused, seeming to gather courage for what she was about to ask. "Can I sleep in your car? Just for tonight. I'll pay you, of course. I just need somewhere safe and dry until morning." Marcus froze, caught completely off guard. In all his years running the shop, no one had ever asked him something like this. He looked at this woman, this stranger who was clearly at the end of her rope, and saw something that touched him deeply. She wasn't asking for charity or throwing her weight around. She was simply asking for shelter from the storm, as vulnerable and honest a request as he'd ever heard. "Dad?" Leo's voice came from the office doorway. "Is the lady okay?" Marcus turned to see his son looking at them with concern. Leo had inherited his mother's compassionate heart, always worried about anyone who seemed hurt or troubled. The woman managed a small smile for the boy. "I'm all right, sweetheart. Just having a bit of car trouble." Marcus made a decision. "Leo, grab your jacket. We're going to walk home and then I'm coming back." He turned to the woman. "I'm not letting you sleep in a car. My apartment's just 2 blocks from here. It's small, but there's a sofa, and you're welcome to it for the night. In the morning, we'll sort out your car and get you on your way." The woman stared at him, and Marcus saw tears suddenly well in her eyes. I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing," Marcus said simply. "You're accepting help. There's a difference." He extended his hand. "I'm Marcus Chen. This is my son, Leo." The woman took his hand, her grip firm despite her obvious emotional state. "Catherine Reynolds," she said. "And thank you. More than I can say." The walk to Marcus's apartment was brief but thoroughly soaking. Leo chattered the whole way, unfazed by the rain, asking Catherine about her car and where she was from and whether she liked pepperoni pizza, because that was his favorite. Catherine answered his questions with growing warmth, some of the tension leaving her shoulders as she engaged with the earnest little boy. Marcus's apartment was indeed small, a 2-bedroom place above a pharmacy, but it was clean and warm, with the kind of comfortable clutter that spoke of a real life being lived there. Photos of Leo at various ages lined the walls, along with a few of a beautiful woman Marcus had clearly loved very much. "The bathroom's down the hall," Marcus said, setting down his keys. "There are clean towels in the cabinet. I'll put on some coffee, and Leo, you find our guests some dry clothes." "On it!" Leo darted to his room, returning moments later with sweatpants and one of Marcus's old work flannels. "These should fit," he announced proudly. Catherine accepted them with a grateful smile and disappeared into the bathroom. When she emerged 20 minutes later, her blonde hair towel-dried and her face scrubbed clean of what little makeup. The rain had left. She looked younger and somehow more real. The oversized flannel and sweatpants should have looked ridiculous, but instead they made her seem approachable, human. Marcus had made coffee and heated up leftover pasta. They sat at the small kitchen table, Leo between them, and ate in comfortable near silence, with just the sound of rain against the windows and Leo's occasional observations about his school day. After Leo had been sent to bed, protesting sleepily that he wanted to hear more about Catherine's adventure, Marcus and Catherine sat in the living room with fresh cups of coffee. The storm continued outside, but here it felt distant, a backdrop rather than a threat. "I should explain," Catherine said quietly, cradling her mug. I'm not I don't usually fall apart like this. I run a marketing firm in the city, Reynolds and Associates. We have 40 employees and clients across 3 states. She laughed, a soft, self-deprecating sound. I'm supposed to be the person who has it all together. What happened today? Marcus asked gently, not pushing, just offering the space for her to talk if she needed to. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. I got a call this morning from my father's care facility. He has Alzheimer's, and he's been declining rapidly. They said I should come, that these could be his last days. She set down her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. So I left immediately, drove 5 hours to get there. And when I arrived, he didn't know who I was. Looked right through me like I was a stranger. Marcus felt his heart contract with sympathy. I'm sorry. I stayed all day, hoping for a moment of recognition that never came. And then I realized I'd missed a critical business meeting, one I'd been preparing for weeks. My assistant had been calling, but I'd turned off my phone. When I finally checked it, there were dozens of messages. The client went with a competitor because I wasn't there to present. She looked at Marcus, her eyes bright with unshed tears. So I got in my car to drive back, already trying to figure out how to explain to my team why. I cost us our biggest account. And then the car died, and the rain started, and I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't be the strong one, the capable one. I just wanted to hide in a car and pretend the world didn't exist for a few hours. Marcus nodded slowly. When my wife died, he said, I was working for a big consulting firm. Good money, prestige, the whole package. But I was never home. Elena handled everything with Leo, and I told myself I was providing for them by working 80-hour weeks. He looked down at his hands, worn and calloused from years of physical labor. After she passed, I kept trying to do both jobs. Father and breadwinner, the way we'd always divided it. I was failing at both, drowning, really. And one day, Leo's teacher called to say he'd been acting out, that he clearly needed more support at home. What did you do? Catherine asked softly. I quit, sold our house in the suburbs, moved here where the cost of living was lower, and bought the repair shop from a retiring mechanic. I'd been taking our cars too for years. Everyone thought I was crazy, throwing away my career. But Leo needed a father, not a paycheck with an absentee attached to it. Marcus smiled. Best decision I ever made. We have less money, sure, but we have dinner together every night. I know his teachers' names. I'm there when he needs me. Catherine wiped at her eyes. You gave up everything. No, Marcus corrected gently. I gave up the things that didn't matter to keep the things that did. There's a difference. They talked long into the night, the conversation flowing with the easy intimacy of two people who recognized something in each other. Catherine spoke about building her company from nothing, about the pressure of being a woman in a male-dominated field, about sacrificing relationships and personal time for professional success. Marcus shared stories of single parenthood, of learning to braid hair from YouTube, videos and burning more dinners than he cared to count. Do you ever regret it? Catherine asked finally. Leaving your old life behind? Marcus thought about it seriously before answering. I regret that it took Elena dying for me to understand what mattered. I regret the time I missed with her, with Leo when he was younger. But the life I have now? No regrets there. Catherine was quiet, processing this. I don't know if I can do what you did. My company, it's not just a job. It's my identity. It's everything I've built. I'm not saying you should, Marcus replied. Your path doesn't have to look like mine. But maybe the question isn't whether you can give it all up. Maybe it's whether you can find a way to let yourself be human, to ask for help, to admit when you're overwhelmed. You don't have to be strong every moment of every day. That's easy for you to say, Catherine said. But there was no hostility in it, just weariness. You've already stepped off the treadmill. I'm still running full speed. Then maybe, Marcus suggested quietly. Tonight is a chance to step off, just for a moment. Rest. Tomorrow will still be there, with all its challenges. But tonight you're safe and dry. Let that be enough. Catherine looked at him, this mechanic with grease under his fingernails and wisdom in his eyes, and felt something shift inside her. For years she had been Catherine Reynolds, CEO, always in control, always 3 steps ahead. But tonight, in this modest apartment with a man she'd just met and his sleeping son down the hall, she was just Catherine, a woman who was tired and scared and unsure. And somehow that felt like a gift. Thank you, she said simply, for seeing me, for helping without making me feel weak for needing it. Marcus smiled. We all need help sometimes. The strong ones are the people who can admit it. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having blown itself out overnight. Catherine woke on Marcus's sofa, covered with a warm blanket she didn't remember pulling over herself, and for a moment couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous evening came flooding back. She found Marcus in the kitchen making pancakes while Leo set the table. The scene was so domestic, so peaceful, that Catherine felt a pang of longing for something she hadn't known she was missing. Morning, Marcus greeted her. Hope you like blueberry pancakes. It's Leo's specialty request for Saturdays. They ate breakfast together, Leo keeping up a steady stream of conversation about his soccer game later that day and the science project he was planning. Catherine found herself genuinely engaged, asking questions and laughing at his enthusiasm. After breakfast, they walked back to the shop. In daylight, Catherine could see the neighborhood properly, small businesses, modest homes, people who waved to Marcus as they passed. It was a different world from her high-rise office and suburban condo, but there was a warmth here, a sense of community she'd forgotten could exist. At the shop, Marcus got to work on Catherine's car while she borrowed his phone to make calls. Her assistant answered on the first ring, relief evident in her voice. Catherine! Thank God. We've been trying to reach you. The Baxter account. I know, Jennifer. I messed up. I should have been there. There was a pause. Actually, something interesting happened. When you didn't show, David gave the presentation instead, and he was so nervous he admitted up front that you were dealing with a family emergency, that he was filling in, but you were the real genius behind the strategy. The client was so impressed by the honesty and the team loyalty that they signed anyway. They said it showed the kind of company culture they wanted to work with. Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. They did? They did. Where are you? Are you okay? Catherine looked around the modest garage, at Marcus working on her engine, at Leo sitting in the office practicing his times tables. I'm okay, she said, and realized it was true. I'll be back tomorrow. But Jennifer, block out my calendar next Friday. I'm taking a personal day. When she hung up, Marcus was watching her with a gentle smile. Good news? The best, Catherine said. Turns out the world didn't end without me. Who knew? Marcus worked on her car for several hours, explaining what he was doing as he went. Catherine found herself genuinely interested, asking questions, learning about the machinery that she normally just expected to work without thinking about it. When he finally finished, the car purring smoothly, Catherine knew it was time to leave. But something had changed in her during this unexpected interlude, and she wasn't ready to just drive away and return to her old life as if nothing had happened. What do I owe you? She asked. For the repair and for everything. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, considering. For the repair, $200. That's parts and labor. For everything else? Nothing. That was just being human. Catherine wrote a check for $500. The extra is for Leo's college fund or soccer equipment, or whatever he needs, non-negotiable. Marcus looked like he might protest, then nodded acceptance. Thank you. They stood there awkwardly for a moment, two people who had shared an unexpected connection, but didn't quite know how to say goodbye. I'd like to stay in touch, Catherine said finally. If that's okay. Maybe come visit sometime, see how Leo's science project turns out. We'd like that, Marcus replied. And Catherine, whatever you decide about your company, your father, your life, just remember you don't have to carry it all alone. Ask for help when you need it. There's no shame in that. Catherine nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She gave Leo, who had come out to say goodbye, a hug that the boy returned enthusiastically. Then she shook Marcus's hand, holding it perhaps a moment longer than necessary. As she drove away, watching the small shop disappear in her rearview mirror, Catherine felt different, lighter somehow. The problems that had seemed insurmountable yesterday were still there, but they no longer felt crushing. She had asked a stranger if she could sleep in his car, and instead he had given her shelter, kindness, and perspective. In the months that followed, Catherine did return to visit. She brought business to Marcus's shop, not out of obligation but because she trusted him. She learned to delegate at work, to admit when she was overwhelmed, to take days off without guilt. She hired additional staff so she could visit her father regularly And while he rarely recognized her, she found peace in being there anyway. Leo's science project, a working model of a water filtration system, took second place in the school fair. Catherine was there to cheer him on, having blocked out the whole afternoon despite it being a weekday. Marcus caught her eye across the gymnasium and smiled. And Catherine felt a warmth that had nothing to do with professional success or personal achievement. On the anniversary of that rainy night, Catherine showed up at the shop with pizza for 3 and a card for Marcus. Inside, she'd written, "Thank you for showing me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Thank you for seeing my humanity when I'd forgotten it myself." Marcus read it, smiled, and tucked it into his wallet. "You did the hard part," he said. "You had the courage to ask. That takes more strength than most people have." They ate pizza in the shop's small office, Leo regaling them with stories from school, the three of them forming an unlikely but genuine friendship. Outside, the world rushed by at its usual frantic pace. But here, for this moment, there was just kindness, connection, and the quiet truth that sometimes life's most important lessons come not from success or achievement, but from those vulnerable moments when we admit we need help and find someone willing to offer it without judgment. Catherine looked at Marcus and Leo, this father and son who had shown her a different way to live, and felt grateful beyond measure for a broken serpentine belt, a stormy night, and a simple question that had changed everything. "Can I sleep in your car?" The answer had been no. But what Marcus had offered instead, shelter, kindness, understanding, and a glimpse of a life lived with different priorities, had been so much more valuable than anything she could have asked for. And in learning to accept that gift, Catherine had found